G'day and welcome to the show. Today we've got George Christensen, Alexandra Marshall and Matthew Littlefield joining me on set as always. We're going to talk about capitalism versus communism, which is better, and is either of them an absolute perfect good that can't go wrong. We're also going to be talking about latest news from the United Kingdom and their actual weaponization of the police force to censor and patrol social media. Is there any end in sight to that tyranny? And of course, the issue of the week is Anthony Albanese's wonderful original idea, which will be so effective in promoting justice and peace throughout the land, an Aboriginal voice to Parliament. This is Pellowe Talk, and I'm Dave Pellowe.
May all that you stand for and that we stand for be preserved under the providence of God for the happiness of mankind.
The trouble is caused by unthinking people who carelessly throw away ageless ideals as if they were old and outworn machinery.
But it is the values of individual liberty, equality before the law and the supremacy of people over the state to which we can always with confidence return as a powerful and uniting force.
Australia is not a secular country. It is a free country.
Well, welcome to the show. As I said before the intro, I'm Dave Pellowe and this is Pellowe Talk. One of the things you need to know about this show is we're going live at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Monday. The whole show will be available where you're watching it if you are currently watching it live. If you're watching a recording of this, streaming on demand anytime later, then this will actually be a short recording. Around the 10 to 15 minute mark, we're going to end it, say goodbye, and ask you to switch over to the website, goodsource.news. At that point, we're fighting the censors. We're saying we're not going to support Facebook or YouTube with the full-length show. What we're actually going to do is ask you to head to the website where we are now beyond the reach of censors. So that censorship-free, gloves-off moment coming up in the next few minutes. First, I actually want to welcome to the show my guests today. Ladies first, Alexandra Marshall. Thank you so much for joining the panel, as you so frequently do.
Thank you for having me. Speaking of censorship, I was just redoing a tweet, realizing that I'd probably get removed from Twitter. So that's what I was humming around there for a second doing.
It's a bit of an art, how to say what you want to say without actually saying it.
I thought rainbow barbed wire might get me pinged on this account. So
absolutely. And also welcome to George Christensen, and author of the spectacularly fast-growing newsletter, conservative newsletter, Nation First. George, welcome.
Thanks very much, Dave. It's great to be on the show, and I sympathise with Alexandra having to second-guess the tweets and posts that she puts out. It's dangerous these days to actually write online what you really think, because you could end up being depersoned.
Well, that is if you're on the right. We've seen people this week writing all kinds of toxically abusive, defamatory comments about you, but that's perfectly acceptable to the censors, not at all against community standards. If you're attacking a white conservative Christian married male, that's totally fair game and within their community standards. Also, welcome to fellow guest in studio, Matthew Littlefield. I forgot your last name for all of half a second.
Wow. Well done, Dave.
Matthew, what is it again? Oh, that's right. Author of Defending Conscience, Matthew Littlefield. You're not Tim Grant. And hello to Tim if you're watching as well. Matt, do you want to watch this clip first, or do you want to have a short introduction to it before we talk about communism versus capitalism?
Yeah, just a short introduction. Just to get the obvious out of the way first, communism is evil. It's not just evil. It's one of the greatest evils that we've ever seen on the face of the earth, and is responsible for the deaths of many people. And it is always fair game to criticize communism and those who promote communism. And so I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying here when I say this. We want to recognize this, but not fall into a problem of binary thinking. Just because communism is evil doesn't mean everything about capitalism is good. And we have to recognize that when we make criticisms of communism online, they're valid and good, but we can also make valid criticisms of our modern economic system and the way that it corrupts things. and it really has corrupted things. I mean, at the basis of capitalism is people being free to trade whatever they have to trade, and that's a good thing. We want people to be free to be able to trade with each other in reasonable ways. But when everything is a commodity and everything is buyable, that includes governments. Now, rather than me make a case about this, I want you to listen to a former American president called Dwight Eisenhower, where he explains something called the military-industrial complex and what a problem it can be. So I'll hand over to that video now.
And watching the scaffold being built. But he did not want to leave office without imparting some deeply held convictions, in some ways counterintuitive convictions. And we're about to see two clips. The first one, the old soldier warning his countrymen about the dangers of what he calls the military-industrial complex.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. First, I should like to express my gratitude to the radio and television networks for the opportunities they have given me over the years to bring reports and messages to our nation. My special thanks go to them for the opportunity of addressing you this evening. 3 days from now, after half a century in the service of our country, I shall lay down the responsibilities of office as, in traditional and solemn ceremony, the authority of the presidency is vested in my successor. This evening, I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
And with that, Dwight Eisenhower left a two-term presidency the way that he had.
That's the end of the video. What Dwight Eisenhower is saying there is after World War II and the wars after World War II, America created the largest military-industrial complex the world had ever seen. And what do we know about money? Money is necessary, but money also can corrupt everything. We read this in the book of James. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is this not your passions at war within your soul? Often, War is the result of greed and avarice and the desire to take from others. And we have to recognize when we're criticizing communism, it's fair game. But we can't argue that capitalism has only done good in this world and capitalists only do good. As Christians, as a pastor myself, you will know that this came out of a Christian worldview. And when it's guided by Christian principles, it blesses people. But when it's guided by rebellion and takes over governments, which is what Dwight Eisenhower is warning about, and then there was a motivation to go to war to make money because they make money off bombs, planes, guns, and everything else, then we get into a very dangerous situation. And notice what he said there. It is important for a populace to be aware, to be informed, as David has dedicated most of his life to doing, informing the populace of what's going on to keep this sort of thing in check. And so I think it's important that if we're going to make criticisms online about these sort of things, we need to do it more honestly and in a way which recognizes our own issues on our own side as well. And that's basically what I wanted to bring up this morning.
That's great. And yeah, you're right. There's this, I guess, echo chamber that we can fall into the trap of indulging in when we assume that everything that's not communism is inherently good and without fallibility. I like to distinguish between capitalism and crony capitalism. And for my sake of definitions, the difference to me is capitalism is something that does have a level of government involved in it. It's not an absolutely free market where monopolies, duopolies, cartel behavior, and those oligarchs in Russia or Silicon Valley get to abuse and oppress good things such as free speech and free trade, etc. This crony capitalism is the thing that is an abuse of freedom, and freedom, I think, is most appreciated and wonderful when we understand that we are free for good, not just free.
Yep, exactly.
George, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I do. It's interesting your take on crony capitalism versus capitalism. I mean, a true economy, natural economy, a true free enterprise system wouldn't have these great monopolies developed. And if you go back far enough, you'd find that there's been some government interference somewhere that has led to the development of monopolies, duopolies, oligarchies, and the bastardization, I guess, of the natural economy. So it is right. We do need to look at our own side before we start. Well, not before we start, but we do need to look at our own side as well as criticize those on the other side, because if we're just going to self-criticize, obviously the alternative, say communism, will say, well, see, we're better. But at the end of the day, they're not. But our own system could be inherently better. It has been, I guess, wrecked in a sense. We've got a system now which has so many people owning so little, and so few people owning so much. And that's not a case for communism. That's a case to get our system restored to a natural economy. And heaven forbid you think I'm pushing some sort of great reset. No. Unfortunately, those in the World Economic Forum that talk about resetting the capitalism that we've got, I mean, these are the people who have been in power and who have made lots of money and profits out of this lopsided system for so long. So something does need to be changed in our system, but what the change is, we need to go back to a natural economy rather than one with more government interference that creates more oligarchies, more monopolies, and more duopolies, because that's all it's going to do.
Yep. Before I flick to you, Ellie Melly, I think it's important to switch to the censor-free mode now. Some of the things you say have got me in huge trouble before. I'm only joking. It's not you. It's the big. It's the big tech censors, but what I do want to do is just advise the viewers, if you're watching the recording of this and not the live stream, we're going to end it right now, and I want you to keep watching the rest of the show. We've got 45 minutes to go. Ellie Millie's about to tell us what she really thinks of capitalism versus communism. We've also got the topics coming up of the Aboriginal voice to Parliament. I'm sure some censors are going to get triggered by some of that conversation. And we're also going to be talking about the censors themselves and their big booted behaviour in the United Kingdom. So thanks for watching. Please head over to goodsource.news, the website, goodsource.news, and continue watching the rest of this video there. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. You know what? We have to fight back against the censorship of big tech. Would you like to help? You can do that now by heading over to the website, goodsource.news. We're going to end the conversation here on this channel because we need to make sure that we're independent and not reliant on big tech. Head over to the website, goodsource.news right now for the rest of this great video.